for anybody that comes in that they're a Democrat or a liberal and they're just like, oh my God, JB, you're a right winger. By the way, as far as policy concerns, I disagree with basically 99% of what this Florida man actually wants to do. My thing that I'm focused on is his style and the method of which he actually goes after leadership. And if the Democratic Party actually did the same thing, imagine how many concessions that we would get. Imagine the concessions that we would get on single-payer healthcare. Imagine concessions we would get on actually increasing the minimum wage to a living wage. And by the way, that whole $15 an hour, that's yesteryear. That's so 2015. We need a fight for 30. That's what we need. Because in most states, or the majority of states in this country, you need to make between $25 and $35 an hour in order to survive. So I would say at least a fight for 30. Like, the price is doubled, right? Let's get into this story. Gaetz Keeper. All right. So Matt Gaetz versus Speaker McCarthy, round 2. Matt Gaetz goes on the offensive against Speaker McCarthy. We're going to get into this damn thing because when I saw this, I was just like, wait, what? They going into it again? So they're fighting. So this is out of the Hill. It says McCarthy-Gaetz feud hits fever pitch. Ooh, baby. You got your popcorn ready? Let's go. All right. Take that down. It says simmering tensions between Speaker Kevin McCarthy of California and Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, man, are boiling over as Florida Republican heightens his threat to oust the GOP leader from his post. The bitterness between the two GOP lawmakers, which stretches back to the speaker's race in January, remember we actually talked about that, hits a fever pitch on Tuesday when Gaetz warned that he would force a vote. Remember that? Force a vote on taking McCarthy's gavel if the California Republican did not meet the series of demands on spending and legislation. It says McCarthy shot back at an expletive latent rant Thursday, declaring Gaetz to file the fucking motion to try and boot him from the speakership. Ooh, wait! Let me tell you, look, y'all, I got to get to this speech because, look, what's his name? He goes over this. I'll do that in a second. Let me show you something. Let me learn you something. All right. Because this speech was... All right. So, let's go back to the beginning. All right. Now let's share the screen. Let's go over this. Because if you guys, and I'll make sure that this is part of, the end screen. But we talked about the holding concessions and forcing a vote, basically with Speaker McCarthy, and how they went 15 rounds on voting for Speaker McCarthy, and McCarthy kept losing because Matt Gaetz refused to be that final vote. Because he was like, unless you're willing to do these concessions, you're not getting the speakership, right? And a lot of us, especially on the left side of the spectrum, I'm not saying the Democratic Party, I'm saying the left. I'm not talking about progressives. Even some progressives, though, were saying force to vote. This is what force to vote was all about. Holding Speaker Pelosi accountable by, threatening to not vote for her unless she agrees to these concessions to put certain policies like Medicare for all, single-payer health care on the House floor, or the $15 minimum wage, things like that, which they refused to do. Basically, this is what Matt Gaetz was actually doing, what we actually thought that would work. And guess what? Lo and behold, it actually worked, because when Matt Gaetz did it, then Kevin McCarthy finally conceded and said, all right, fine, I'll do what you guys want, right? So now we're a few months after, 8 months later. This is what's going on. And so now Matt Gaetz basically said, rent is due. Let's go.
On this very floor in January, the whole world witnessed a historic contest for House Speaker. I rise today to serve notice. Mr. Speaker, you are out of compliance that allowed you to assume this role. The path forward for the House of Representatives is to either bring you into immediate total compliance or remove you pursuant to a motion to vacate the chair. We have had no vote on term limits or on balanced budgets as the agreement demanded and required. There's been no full release of the January 6 tapes. As you promised, there has been insufficient accountability for the Biden crime family. And instead of cutting spending to raise the debt limit, you relied on budgetary gimmicks and rescissions so that you ultimately ended up serving as the valet to underwrite Biden's debt and advance his spending agenda.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Hold up. Now, let me ask you guys this one thing. When have you seen a progressive, whether it be Pramila Jayapal, whether it be Mark Pocan, whether it be, oh my God, Raphael Warnock, John Ossoff, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman. When have you seen these progressives hold, at the time, Nancy Pelosi, or now Hakeem Jeffries? When have you seen them hold their feet to the fire so publicly like this? Don't worry, I'll wait. It's wild, isn't it? That a member of your party could literally hold your feet to the fire publicly and say, look, if you're not going to do what we agreed to, we're taking you down. We're taking you down. When have you ever seen this? This doesn't happen on the Democratic side. Let's continue, because he continues.
Speaker, you boasted in January that we would use the power of the subpoena and the power of the purse. But here we are 8 months later, and we haven't even sent the first subpoena to Hunter Biden. That's how you know that the rushed and somewhat rattled performance you just saw from the Speaker isn't real. At this point, during Democrat control over the House of Representatives, they had already brought in Don Jr. 3 times. And we haven't even sent the first subpoena to Hunter Biden. Power of the subpoena and power of the purse. Only thing the 118th Congress is known for at this point is electing Kevin McCarthy Speaker and underwriting Biden's debt. And unfortunately, there's only one of those things we can remediate at this time. Power of the purse. Our leadership right now is asking us to vote for a continuing resolution. A vote for a continuing resolution is a vote to continue the Green New Deal, a vote to continue inflationary spending, and in the most troubling of fashions, a vote for a continuing resolution is a vote to continue the election interference of Jack Smith. Mr. Speaker, we told you how to use the power of the purse. Individual, single subject spending bills that would allow us to have specific review, programmatic analysis, and that would allow us to zero out the salaries of the bureaucrats who have broken bad, targeted President Trump, or cut sweetheart deals for Hunter Biden. September 30th is rapidly approaching, and you have not put us in a position to succeed. There is no way to pass all the individual appropriations bills now. And it's not like we didn't know when September 30th was going to show up on the calendar. I must be better. You must be better. And this House must be better, for it is the last best hope for tens of millions of Republicans.
So I just want to say this. for anybody that comes in that they're a Democrat or a liberal and they're just like, oh my God, JB, you're a right winger. By the way, as far as policy concerns, I disagree with basically 99% of what this Florida man actually wants to do. My thing that I'm focused on is his style and the method of which he actually goes after leadership. And if the Democratic Party actually did the same thing, imagine how many concessions that we would get. Imagine the concessions that we would get on single-payer healthcare. Imagine concessions we would get on actually increasing the minimum wage to a living wage. And by the way, that whole $15 an hour, that's yesteryear. That's so 2015. We need a fight for 30. That's what we need. Because in most states, or the majority of states in this country, you need to make between $25 and $35 an hour in order to survive. So I would say at least a fight for 30. Like, the price is doubled, right? We can get concessions on ending qualified immunity in this country, at the very least. We can get concessions on pushing for Joe Biden to sign the Higher Education Act, right? And to push for that, just so that everybody's student loan debt can be canceled. Couldn't we do something like that? Couldn't we push Biden to go to the Department of Education to start making it so that colleges and universities, public colleges and universities, are tuition free? Divert some of the money from the military budget and to colleges and universities so we can make them tuition free? Could we repurpose some of that money so that we can actually, instead of having the child poverty rate double from like 7% to over 12%, we can actually maybe get rid of child poverty altogether? Maybe, just maybe. But there's so many concessions that we can do, right? But the Democrats would never do that. Because they're skilled. They're skilled of the leadership. And please, 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 people can go, we need to vote for more progressives because they're not funded by corporations. What good is not being funded by a corporation when you basically kowtow and obey people who are funded by corporations? If you're not actually going to push back in a more substantive, meaningful way against leadership in Congress, then what's the point? People like Jamal Bowman should take a page out of Matt Gaetz' book in regards to pushing back against leadership within the Democratic Party. But as you know, Jamal Bowman did not do it. Not one iota. He didn't. In fact, he thought it was crazy what Matt Gaetz was doing. Would you like to see? I got you. JB got you, baby. All right. Because Jamal Bowman decided to go, this is crazy. This is crazy. So here's my number. Don't call me Stacy. Sorry. Didn't mean to remind you all of that song. All right, let me share the screen. Let's go to what Jamal Bowman says. Jeez Louise, this is crazy, y'all. All right, Jamal. Here's what he says. He says, holy cow! Oh, hell is breaking loose on the floor of the House. So melodramatic, aren't we, Jamal? He says, Matt Gaetz is threatening to launch a mutiny against Kevin McCarthy and oust him out of power. To the Speaker of the House, he says, this is what you created. You are the worst kind of coward, and now you reap what you sow. You have kowtowed and bent to the demands of the most extremist zealots in your party and the cost of our institutions and democracy. While the extremists are a small minority, you have cowered before them and allow them to lie, intimidate it, and strong-arm their dangerous political ends. Instead of leadership, you have shown nothing but cowardice. You are about nothing except for your own power. You might be Speaker today, but if you don't stand up to this harmful element of your party, you will allow them to destroy you and us in the process. Mr. Speaker, grow a backbone, because until then, you do not speak for anyone. And then he shows Matt Gaetz on the floor, basically showing you what I was just showing you. Here's my thing, Representative Jamal Bowman. Where's your spine? Where's your backbone? Because last time I checked, you guys kowtowed and were cowards in regards to Nancy Pelosi when it came to her being Speaker. What about Hakeem Jeffries? What about your kowtowing and lack of chutzpah for holding Hakeem Jeffries accountable and saying, if you do not do what we want as a progressive caucus, we're not going to vote for you? You see, there's lessons learned that could be obtained from observing what Matt Gaetz did. But it's never that way. It's never, man, wow, I should do what Matt Gaetz does on the Democratic side. It's never that way. And then it's like when somebody actually does, like, oh my God, you guys are decorum. God forbid that we actually hold our leaders accountable instead of actually holding them accountable. You hand wring like, oh no, look at what they're doing. When in reality, what are you doing? What are you and the progressives doing? But here's the grift, right? Because Bowman has no room to talk because him and his progressive colleagues, they've failed to hold Pelosi accountable or even make demands to get concessions to put on the House floor, like single-payer health care or $15 an hour minimum wage. This is what forced to vote was all about. Remember hashtag forced to vote? Bowman lacks the guts to do what Matt Gaetz did. That's the thing. But this is all by design. And why do I say this? Because as Larry Sharpe was so eloquently putting it, there's a uniparty. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are one party. Because of that, you have good cop and bad cop. That's all this is. And when Matt Gaetz plays the bad cop, Jamal Bowman plays the good cop. And when Jamal Bowman plays the bad cop, Matt Gaetz will play the good cop. And so it's, oh my God, the leadership is not doing what we said they were going to do. So guess what? We're going to fight against the leadership. Then you have the opposite side going, oh my God, look at them. They're actually going up against the leadership. It's mutiny. When in reality, they both work for the same people. Both work for the same parties. Not much difference. So that's the grift of both parties. Is that they'll make it seem like one side is horrible for doing what they're doing, and the other side is horrible for doing what they're doing. Because now the Republicans are going to go, well, look at the Democrats. They're just following along whatever leadership wants without actually having a backbone. So this is how they get you. They make it seem like, oh, well, the Republicans actually hold their leaders accountable. And the Democrats, they don't hold their leaders accountable. But at the same time, Republicans really don't hold their leaders accountable. And the Democrats, don't hold theirs accountable either. There's paper tigers on both sides. One has outward cowardice. They play like they got some chutzpah. Ultimately, this is why both political parties are a farce. This is why you leave these political parties. Now, if you want to go independent or third party, I highly recommend it. Because if you want to at least thumb your nose at the system, then you'll do that. And also, vote for things that you actually want instead of against things you don't want. Right? This is why third parties are so important. Because third parties and independents bring a different perspective into the system that both Democratic and Republican parties don't want you to think about. That's why it's important to focus on them, but it's the least of what you can do. The most of what you can do is by doing something on the ground or with your neighbors, right?